Okay, Ajanta, thank you so much for joining me on this channel on Yogami Kids. I'm so excited to have you. And like I was mentioning, I have been following you from COVID times, and you're doing amazing work with Bollywood, right? Bollywood dance,
Yes.
cultural experiences for children. And you are from Chicago.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, that's all I know about you, but I would love to hear more about your platform and all the work you're doing. So give us a
Yes.
little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored. I started Bollywood and Culture Groove as I was mentioning about 15 years ago. So it's been a long time. And the goal has been pretty simple. How can we sort of create belonging and empathy through the joy of Indian culture. So that has been kind of the goal from the very beginning. And what we offer for that has, of course, evolved and changed with the times. So we
Okay.
started as a dance company, but I never quite taught just dance. So it was always dance with the stories of the people that the dance came from. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was sort of what differentiated us, and people loved it. And that went on for quite a few years, and then we started writing children's books. When Maya and Neil India Adventure series that
Yeah.
started, and then of course, as you mentioned, during COVID, we pivoted overnight, and then we went moved completely to virtual. So right now, there are basically four things that I do. So I teach classes, which
Okay.
are like a complete immersion. So it's like dance and folk art and cultural exploration, and we focus on like different regions of India. So it's like a
Wow.
super deep dive into the culture. And then I write books, of course, and I do workshops around the country. And I have also started to speak at conferences about multicultural education because that's kind of been my life's work. So yeah, I do
That's
lots
amazing.
of different things.
Wow. So it's just one platform, but
Yes.
you're doing so much. And you have been in the news for quite on many different channels, right? Can
We
you
have been
give
very fortunate. Yes, we have received a ton of media coverage across national channels, local channels. I mean, it's been amazing. So, yeah, we've been very fortunate with that.
how did that happen? How did you get the media attention?
Completely organically. I wish I had the PR chops to like reach out to TV
Right.
stations and say, come cover me. No, I don't have any of that. So it was literally just word of mouth, people discovering us, and then, just showing up. Literally, I had like NBC National reached out to me and they said, hey, we do this program. We want to come feature you. I'm like, how did you even find me? Like, I was as
Wow.
surprised as anybody else. That was, I think, one of the first ones we did, which was straight on national. And then we started kind of getting Chicago media covered as well. So yeah, completely organically. I can't even take any credit for it.
That's amazing. So you do Bollywood. Is it focused on Bollywood only now, or
So the work that we do, I do use Bollywood dance numbers usually, but they always tend to have some kind of folk root. So I typically won't do a song which would sound, for the lack of a better word, very Western to you. That's not
Mhm.
usually my thing. So pretty much what I do is my starting point for my content is always a region of India. So for
Mhm.
example, last session, we focused on Amritsar. And so when we focused on Amritsar, so from there, we started to, my kids essentially learned everything about the Sikh community. We learned about Vaisakhi. We learned about Golden Temple. And then from
Mhm.
there, I said, okay, what are the songs I can pick for the different age groups? So I kind of go from there. I do
Yeah,
like using Bollywood music just because they are modernized enough that
popular.
kids can connect with them
Mhm.
very easily. But I'll pick songs which, again, you will be able to easily tell this is the part of India that this song is representing. So I use Bollywood songs in that way. So it keeps it very fun for the kids.
That's wonderful. And you don't have a studio though, right? Or do you?
I don't have a physical space. I have
Yeah.
like an administrative office, but that's it. And during COVID times, I really thanked my lucky stars that I didn't, because people with physical spaces really struggled at that time. So
Oh,
what I
yes.
do is I rent from other dance studios. And then I also, go to different schools. So I run like after school programs and books. Of course, I can write from anywhere, right? So it doesn't really matter. I don't really need a space for that. So yeah, so far it's worked out.
That's wonderful. Were you always a writer when you're talking about books?
I
Or
have
how did
always,
that happen?
yeah, I have always been a storyteller. And so, like I said, from the beginning, as I started to teach kids, right, I went into class and I was like, do this move. And then I was like, no, this feels so hollow. Like, they don't know what I'm talking about. Why do this move? And so I started, telling them the stories of this is where it comes from. And then I would tell them like a folk tale from that region. So I was constantly telling stories, even though
Okay.
I wasn't like not always creating 100% original content.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it was actually my husband's idea. So Vivek and I started Bollywood Group together. He's more behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But he was like, you know what? People shouldn't have to come to your class to
Yeah.
really enjoy the cultural content. Let's put that into books. And that's kind of when the idea happened. So it was completely an accident. Like, we never planned for it.
Wow. And how many of those books you have? And it's available on Amazon, right? I
Yes, it
have seen some
is.
of those books available on Amazon. I would love to read some of those to my, kids group as well. Sometime
Yes.
soon,
Oh,
I
that'd
will
be
do that.
wonderful. Yes,
Yeah.
I would love that. So yeah, they are all available on Amazon. We are self-published. We have 16 books in the title right now, and
Mm-hmm.
we've sold about 95,000 books worldwide.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just waiting for that last 5K so I can claim 100,000.
Wow.
And yeah, the books are basically again, how can we make learning about Indian culture super fun and exciting? It should not feel like a chore. So
Right.
kind of going back to the mission, right? So like, how do you create that belonging? Is if you're part of the South Asian culture, how can I create things and whether it's products or services where parents find it easy, it becomes fun and exciting for the kids to absorb it and say, I want to learn more about my own people. And
Yeah.
the empathy part comes from if you're not Indian, right? Like, how can I learn about a different way of living? And I can then kind of
Yes.
find those parallels and I can start to feel like the world is a much more connected place than I originally thought. Like, that's kind of the goal, right, with those two words. And so every book has been written that way. The
Mhm.
barrier is super low. It's all non-religious, very much on purpose, so that no matter who you
That's
are,
great.
yeah, you just
Wow.
feel excited about wanting to learn and explore more and just widen your world.
So yeah, that's a good thing you mentioned because that's one of the things probably, kids don't want to, show interest. Maybe it sounds too religious or too, too much culture
Yes,
sometimes,
if it's
right?
information dense, some books can become like that. There's so much information in there
Yeah.
that
Yes,
you just lose the kid like within a few pages. So
right.
thankfully we got lucky because we had been teaching kids for so long. We
Mm-hmm.
learned how to speak to them. And so that came in very handy when we were writing the books. I'm like, I know exactly how much information to add. So a
Wow.
3-year-old, who has the attention span of an ant, can
Yeah.
actually sit through the whole book. So we got very lucky that we had years of practicing that before we even
Mm-hmm.
wrote our first book.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's
And
been the
you
goal.
serve age groups all the way from 3-year-olds, like you said, to
Yes, to
teens, is it?
to adults, yes,
Adults.
everybody, yes. So we teach all age groups. Yeah, we start at 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
The
So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say the books are only 3 to 8 though.
The
Anything
books are
older
three
than
to
8,
eight.
yeah, any older than 8, and they're kind of like, it's a picture book, right? So by then
Okay,
they're into more chapter books and stuff like that.
nice.
Yeah,
So, why do you want cultural awareness as part of your programs? Why do you think that is important?
absolutely. So kind of goes back to again, what we do, and the reason the why is that it's twofold. One is kids need to feel that they belong. There is a space for them,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the color of their skin or which part of the world they're from, and that validation comes from seeing themselves, whether it's media, whether it's literature, whatever it is. The moment they
Yeah.
see themselves, they go, yes, look, that person looks like me, and look, these other people are also now learning about people like me, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
massive amount of validation. And that's kind of why, for us, that representation is so important to create through work. And again, for the people who don't belong to the culture,
Right.
I feel that empathy is finally what creates a kinder world. Because we're
Yeah.
scared of the unknown, right? So when a child
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know anything about a certain culture, to that child, everything about that is a little scary because it's unknown. And so I think the more you learn, that fear goes away and it gets replaced by curiosity. It gets replaced by appreciation, by kindness. And I think so that's what end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to create a kinder world through all of
Absolutely.
this. So yeah, that's kind of been the why behind the work.
That's great. And I think it's important to keep on reinforcing these, awareness and values, because no matter how much, we try to, teach these things, there is always somewhere someone who, because I'll give you a real life example where,
Yes.
somebody in our school district, right? One of the child was said, go back to where you came from.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
like
Yeah.
that, out of the blue,
Yes.
right? And we can kind of say that, it's not the child, it's somewhere in his environment, or where his families, or his upbringing, whatever it can be,
Yep.
right? It
100%.
has the influence on the child.
Absolutely.
And when he sees people who is not like, like the same as him, then these kind of, comments, or it just comes out. So, what do you say? How do you enforce these, in within the school system? What do you think we should do as parents or as community for being more, mindful of such comments?
Yeah, this just reminded me. So last year summer, I did like a 22 library tour in Wisconsin, and as part
Wow.
of that, I went to very tiny, tiny, almost like rural places in Wisconsin, because this was all southern
Okay.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And there were places where they had never seen an Indian person before. I was like the very first Indian person who they had ever met. And it was such an interesting experience. And I remember I'd gone in. So, what I do is my workshops are very interactive. And so, I often ask them questions first. And I say, why don't you take a guess at what am I showing? And then I tell them what it is. So, we were talking about Holi, Festival of Colors.
Yeah.
And as part of that, I was showing them the drink, thandai, that is often,
Mm-hmm.
so, it's like a milkshake, etc. But I showed them the picture, and kids, and I said, guess what this is? And so they had all kinds of guesses. It's coconut milk, it's water, standard guesses. And then one kid, he stood up, and he had that smirk on his face where I was like, something tricky is coming. I could tell.
God.
And he goes, I think it's cow urine. And
Oh,
it was so interesting to me because one, no kid that age uses the word urine. That's just
yes.
not a normal part of the vocabulary. That's taught behavior. You can tell that there has been a discussion and of some kind of a myth or stereotype or something, and he's just repeating the words. It's not the child's
Yeah,
fault.
totally.
So
Yeah.
it took me a moment, right? I kind of looked at him and I just said no, and I moved on because I'm like, there is nothing I'm gonna do that I can say at this point. Disciplinarian action is not going to help. If I criticize, he gets more attention, which is what he's trying to do. And so I just said, no, sit down, let's do this. And then I did the 45-minute workshop, right? And through that time, they learned, they listened, they danced, they
Yeah.
asked. And by the end, every single kid was smiling year to year. And I
Mm-hmm.
ended with a very cool mythological story about Holi, about Prahlad and whatnot, a kid-friendly version of it,
Sure.
obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And which it showed about, the bravery and the courage that Prahlad had, and etc. etc. They were engrossed. Like every kid is just like sitting there, like what's gonna happen next? And I kept looking at him, and I'm looking how engaged he is, right?
Okay.
And the whole thing ended, and I said, that's it. That is the most that I could do. Because in that moment, he had such a great time
Yeah.
that I have a feeling that next time, when he
Mm.
hears these things, whether it's from his family or friends or whoever it is, a small part of his brain is going to go, actually, I know something really positive about these people too. So maybe they're not all like this. There is a lot of positive aspect to it. The seed is sown, and now
Yes.
it's going to grow. And at some point, the curiosity will take over, and he'll go, let me explore this on my own. Do I really have to form the opinion that I'm being told? You know what? What I have seen is a much more positive side of this. And
Exactly.
so that, as an educator, that's my job, right? It's not to like, I'm not here to correct everything about the child. I can't do that single-handedly, but I can counter it by just showering you with positivity. And let's just let that, plant or tree grow inside you over time. So that has been sort of the approach for me personally through all these years.
That's good, because I think in a school setting, educators or even administrators, they are all busy with so many things. And when incidents like these happen, it's like here and there. It may not be regular, it's here and there. And they may not take it seriously, right? They might either just brush it under the rug, but the
Yes,
child who has been there has gotten affected by it, and that stays with the child, right? The
absolutely,
comment.
absolutely. Yes,
So
exactly.
I think it
And
has
that's
to
the
be.
administration's job, right? The administration has to step in with the discipline, which is something that I think should be done. But I think the educators, I think the best thing is to counter that with completely changing up the illusions that they have with some real world joy, right? So yeah, I think
Wow.
I think I think it's a combination of that joy and discipline. We can't forget the joy because if we do, there is
Absolutely.
never going to
Yeah,
be anything positive that'll come out of it. It can't just be
that's true.
discipline.
That's true. Yeah. So I'm going to stick with a little bit of a school discussion. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, there's been huge discussion in the community about cultural holidays in school.
Yes.
I don't know, have you come across that? So there has to be a holiday for school Diwali and Eid and Ramadan and all the Jewish festivals.
Yes.
And there are of course divided groups, right? One group, especially the teachers, they don't want the holidays because they want to catch up on work. But there was a whole group of parents who want holidays, and there was these people in between who wanted the best of both. They want that opportunity to teach children about culture and all these values, at the same time not keeping them away from school, because how is that going to help?
Right.
And there was a whole discussion, if for example, if I celebrate Diwali and if I'm sitting at home,
Yeah.
how will that help in kind of telling others about the culture? So just curious about what your thoughts
Yes.
are on this.
Yeah. And it's a great question. This also happened very recently the other thing that I've also seen, and this just recently happened from a school in New Jersey, or no, I'm sorry, Pennsylvania. And they wanted to bring me in to do like a virtual assembly for Diwali. And the other people at the school said, no, you didn't do assemblies for Chinese New Year. You didn't do an assembly for, Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Why Diwali? You can't just do one.
Yes.
And the solution was to not do any of them. And
Oh, not to any of them. Okay.
and I think that is wrong.
Yeah.
I think the solution is grab a calendar,
Mm.
start, and I give a whole talk on this. So I'm not gonna bore you with all the
No,
details.
no, that's
But
okay.
there is a methodology that I actually propose in my talks, how to identify which ones to pick to represent.
Oh,
And
you should
through
share
that,
that. I think it will be
yes,
helpful. Because it
absolutely.
is a big dilemma, whether to keep the holidays or not keep the
Yes.
holidays. Okay.
Exactly. So I have a free download on my site, and I can mention that later. But
Nice.
basically, I list it out. It's like, here's the structured approach on figuring out who do you need to represent, right, in the community. And there is a concept of the people who are represented, and the people who are not represented. How do you pick and choose? But that, I think, is the right way to go about it. Figure out who you need to represent and make sure you make the time. It is as important as academics. Do you have specials at your school? Why do you do them? Why not only do academics? There is a reason you're doing specials. If you have music, drama, PE, theater, whatever you have, all
Right.
of these things have an importance, and so does this. And I think in today's world, you have to make space for it, right?
Mhm.
It should be during school hours. And so I do
Yeah.
understand, like, yes, if kind of following the logic, if every kid who wants to celebrate Christmas is able to do it at their home with their family, well, every child who wants to celebrate Diwali should be able to do it at their home. Yes, absolutely. But that week, you still have time talk
You
about
tell
Diwali that
us.
week, right? And that's on
Mhm.
the educator. So the teachers should have that calendar ready before the school year starts and say, here are the days I have, these are the days I'm going to do it. And it doesn't require a whole school day. I mean,
Yeah.
do, 30 minutes of something. But that 30-minute discussion in your classroom of just bringing everybody together and then highlighting the kids who belong to that culture and say, this is a beautiful festival that they celebrate. Oh my gosh, the validation you're giving that kid. I mean, it's
Wow.
incredible, right? I mean, what a fantastic way to kind of create, and
Yeah.
you're going to reap the benefits as an educator, as an administrator. You will see the school culture change over time, and you
Absolutely.
will reap the benefits. There'll be fewer issues related to, like, the stuff you were saying, right? When somebody said go back to your country, those things go away when we develop that cultural appreciation. And so overall, you're creating a healthier environment. You can
Mm-hmm.
teach better in that
Mm-hmm.
healthier environment, get better outcomes, no matter what it is, because end of the day, it is standardized testing and grades and whatnot. But in order to do that, you need a cohesive unit in your class, and that's how you create this. And so I have very strong feelings about this, which I think every school, literally at the beginning of the school year, should figure out what cultures do I need to represent this year, make sure it's built into the school hours, and just go for it. Go bring experts from outside. If you feel like, oh, the
Yeah.
teacher feels like, hey, I don't belong to this culture, I can't do justice, go find the experts. They are there. They're sitting and waiting
Exactly.
for you to invite you into
Exactly.
their classrooms and,
Yeah.
and come and talk about it. So yeah, that's my little
Yeah. Or
very
or
passionate
include.
feelings about it.
No, that's wonderful because or include parents from the community, right?
Absolutely.
Who will be willing to come and read a book about their culture, so
Exactly.
that everybody knows. So we do celebrate outside of the schools
Yeah.
about, hey, maybe it's Diwali or Ramadan or whatever. But then what happens is, for example, Garba is very popular, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is the other cultures are not coming to experience it. It's just the people of the same culture are going to these events as well
Right.
outside of school.
Yes.
So I think within the school, with the educators, with the whole community,
Yep.
I think we have to bring these discussions. So
100%. 100%. This is why I do so many assemblies where literally they'll bring the whole school in front of me, 700, 800 kids in one go. And I love that because you
wow.
cannot create that outside of school. It's just like, when you're working in corporate world, the co-workers that you have, you might not hang out with them outside of work, right?
Yeah,
That might
yeah,
not be a regular group. But in the
yes,
working space, you have a unique collection of
you have
people.
to. Yeah.
That's exactly what happens inside a school as well. And so you need to bring the experience inside. Directing people outside isn't going to work.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah.
Okay, so just how, for example, parents now, let's talk about multicultural parenting within the household,
Yes.
right? How do we ensure our kids, again, I think there's a lot about parents themselves putting in effort and time and
Yes.
showing leading by example and all that,
Yes.
but what are some small ways that a multicultural household can do to enforce these values in children?
Absolutely. And again, I think it's the same thing that I talked about at school where there is a chain reaction. You do something and then your original goal gets fulfilled as well. So most of the people who are, like people like me who came, for example, I came from India and I
Yeah.
want my child to have learn more about Indian culture. My kid has no choice, right? Living in with me, they're like trapped
Yeah,
into
yeah.
this. But but for other parents are so keen, right? I want my child to know about my heritage, my roots, and sometimes the way they present is not necessarily the most exciting way, right? So end
Yes.
of the day, that is a goal that every parent has, though, right? We all do. The beautiful thing about that multicultural approach is the chain reaction is that your kid then gets more interested in your own culture as well. And that's the chain
Yeah.
reaction that people don't naturally see. And it requires a lot of effort. I'm not going to downplay that. Parents have already so much going on. But hey,
Yeah.
you know what? Do the same thing. If you see a cultural celebration happening, and there are so many free ones that the
Yes.
cities do, they're like the libraries do, the parks do, so many free events.
Mm-hmm.
Make the time and show up, right? Taste the food
Mm-hmm.
from there, watch the performances from there, learn the stories about them, read books about them, And if you put in that effort, right, and you're basically telling your child that it's not just one thing, that there's so many different ways, and then the child not only faces outwards and gets that empathy and kindness, but they also start to look inwards and say, oh, what all does my culture offer now? So again, I feel like you get that dual benefit just by doing that. And it's so easy and so accessible, but I don't think people necessarily prioritize that. If they have time,
Yeah.
they're like, let me just teach you all about my culture. Like whatever time I have
Yeah.
outside of your school,
Right.
I'm just going to teach you everything about myself. No, you know what? Pick like 5 different cultures. And there's so many free events, like park districts do,
Yeah.
at least around here. I see that, right? Libraries do it. Go into a library and make sure every month you're picking a book from a different culture. It's that easy. It's free. It doesn't even cost anything. But
Yeah.
make
Just
sure your
read about
child.
them. Stories and books are the best
Exactly.
way
That is
to teach
such a great
kids.
starting
Yeah.
point, right? And then
Absolutely.
sometimes they get curious and the kid would be like, hey, can we look on YouTube like a video about this particular festival that we're learning about? Show them the visuals if there isn't anything accessible around you. There are so many ways that are very small, that don't cost much. I think it's just about the intention. But I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest surprise that a parent will face, is that if I teach them about 5 different culture, your child is going to turn towards you and want to know about more about you as well. It's like the beautiful surprise that they're going to get.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think as the kids grow older, what is your experience? I always, when I'm talking to, kids, educators nowadays, I'm asking them specifically about teenagers.
Yeah.
So, what is your experience with teens? Do they feel a little shy to be too much, culturally, out there, or they are okay? How do they find that self-confidence in them to be proud of who they are?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And I get to do this by, like I'm so fortunate that I have so many kids of that age group that come to my classes. And so parents are using me as a way to get them excited, right? And
Nice.
if I can get them so excited that they're not just letting go of that shyness of like, is this cool? Do I want to do this? To
Exactly.
going and telling other people, guess what I just did, right? And sometimes what I find very helpful is if you can bring in elements that connects their 2 different worlds. Because
Okay.
let's be real, right? They do have 2 different dual identities as they're growing
They
up in this
do,
country.
yeah, for
So
sure,
you
because
can't
they
just.
are hanging out with a completely different kind of people out in schools and colleges or wherever they are at. Like,
Exactly, right? So it wouldn't be fair to assume that, oh, this guy, my kid is going to grow entirely Indian or Chinese or entirely. It's not going to happen, right? They
not
do
at
have
all.
dual identities. Can you connect the dots somehow? I can do that through my work, right? So, for example, when I pick songs, sometimes I'll pick like an Ed Sheeran song or a Taylor Swift song, and I'll find something which has an Indian beat to it, so like an Indian version of it, and then I switch over to a song that's completely Indian. But that
Yeah.
little beginning got them to see, oh, it all connects, right? So
Yeah.
I think if you create those points of connection sometimes, if you, so as a parent, you have to find those opportunities though, right, for them, something that makes it exciting. Like I've come across STEM programs where what they do is they will teach about, of course, the robotics and this and that, but then they'll say, once a week they'll have like a cultural night in there. So they're going
Hmm.
into an environment where they feel this is cool enough, I want to do this, but then they sneak in the cultural bit into it. You have to find those spaces, because it's harder with teens. It's not like a 5-year-old where you're like, come on, come with me, and they'll just follow
Yes.
you, right? They're not going to do that
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
So it's a harder work, and it's basically you have to start from some introduction that they're willing to take, a small leap that they're willing to take, and then you kind of introduce them to the thing. Best thing, it's very hard to create that inside the house.
Hmm.
But if you find, there are those resources that you have to find out there, and they are there. They are there that kind of teach in that way or create environments that way. Start with your kids' passions and hobbies, and then
Yeah.
see where it goes. Where they can get that, take that little leap at least
For
dip
sure.
their
Yeah.
feet. But yeah, teens are harder. I have a 12-year-old at home, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they don't want to be like too much about, hey,
Yeah.
just it's just me and my culture. They in fact want to embrace others as well. That is what I have seen,
Yes.
and I think it's a great way because even us as parents, we can find ways to create that balance,
Oh
learn
yeah.
to create that balance.
Absolutely. And try not to squash it out. Like I
Exactly.
see sometimes parents wanting to do that. I literally
Mhm.
saw, somebody complaining that their child had an American accent. And I was like, what do you think is going to happen? You live in this country. Like, why is the expectation that the child is going to speak, English in your native accent? That's not going to happen. So don't squash it. Acknowledge the dude's second identity. And then
Yes.
the conflict, I think, goes down at that point.
Yeah. And all of these media is doing amazing work. Like we are showing up on TV shows.
Yes.
Do you have those conversations, Bridgerton, and there are so
Yes.
many other shows. And recently, I've been watching this show called The Pit, where there is an Indian doctor, a
Yeah.
neurosurgeon. So these are wonderful ways to connect everybody and be proud of our culture and see
Absolutely.
somebody like us
Right?
who are doing
I mean,
great things out
how
there.
happy did it make every adult in this country when they saw the Bridgerton lead being an Indian, right? Like we were all
Exactly.
glowing. It had nothing to do with us. Like it's not like we got anything out of it, but just
Right.
seeing that on screen was so cool. And that's
Yeah.
exactly the experience that kids need as well. So like Mira the Royal Detective, perfect example. Kids love Mira. What a great way for them to see that representation. Yeah, I love it. I think Indian culture is having a whole moment right now in the media, which I'm loving it.
Awesome. So I teach yoga, mindfulness, and socio-emotional learning skills,
Nice.
emotional literacy, and those kind of things at schools, right? So I think they are connected. Your work, culture, and dance and storytelling, and which are like I don't think there's a differentiation between this and that, right? But do you have any uh, moments of mindfulness or yoga in your classrooms?
Sometimes, yes, it doesn't
Okay,
focus as much on it. There are
sure.
little bits and pieces. And if I might just say, I think more Indian people need to teach yoga in this country. So it
Yes.
makes me very happy that you're
Thank
doing
you
it.
for saying that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy, right? Because
Right.
I think at least when we were growing up, I thankfully took enough yoga. I went to camps and this and that. But for a
Sure.
lot of people, they didn't want to do it anymore. It was like too Indian for us, and we wanted to do more.
Yes.
We want to emulate the West and whatnot. And then you come here, and you can't find an
Everybody's doing
Indian
yoga.
yoga instructor. They're all not. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm like, come on, we need some representation of our own culture. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing it. And then yeah, I don't think I have too much of that. I mean, I bring in some part of it with like cool down
Sure.
and things like that in class, but it's not as much. And
Mhm.
so I love it when my students also go to a yoga class, which I think is a wonderful. And
Yeah.
my gosh, the kids need mindfulness in today's day. They're growing up in the digital age. Their
Mhm.
childhood is not the same as ours. We cannot expect them to put their screens away. It's not going to happen. And so the
Not good.
best we can do is to counter it with the kind of things that you are doing. So I think your work is so important right now because I think it's like only thing that can counter the whole digital craziness and overstimulation is yoga and mindfulness. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And I think, yeah, like you said, even just 5 minutes of your time without the screen, you can immediately, I know, notice the difference in
Yes.
how it makes you feel and the way you are. So
Yeah.
I think it's important.
100%.
And yeah, just to end the conversation, tell us a little bit about any heartwarming stories from all your experiences. You have been traveling so much. Just tell us about your impact and anything that has touched your heart and that makes you say, "Oh my God, this was all worth it."
Oh, I have too
I'm
many
sure you have too
stories.
many.
I have too many stories. I would really have to think about it because it happens almost on a daily basis.
I
I
see.
cannot tell you how wonderful it feels, to get the kind of feedback that I get continuously. I get
Mhm.
letters from little kids who are readers of our books. And it's amazing. Like there was a time when I think a lot of schools have dress up as your favorite character at school. Um, and like one day when children would
Yeah,
dress
yes.
up as like
Mhm.
characters from their books, kids would
Mhm.
dress up as Maya Neal, and
Wow.
like they'll take a little squirrel stuff, like a stuffed squirrel with them and whatnot. And I mean, it's unreal to see that. When I just see those things, it's like, oh my gosh, they picked my character from my book to dress up like that, right? Or when the parents come and tell me, oh my gosh, I could never get my kid to be interested in Indian culture. And now
Yeah.
they teach me at home. They'll come and say, guess what I learned today? And they will excitedly tell you everything. Or when I go to these large gatherings, right, and I do a presentation and whatnot, the kind of questions that I get, they are so intrigued by at that point, right? And you can tell there's like a whole new, like the wheels are turning, and
Yeah.
it's every one of these moments, through every moment of that. Oh, it makes it so worth it. It's yeah. There are too many like incidents, separately to even counter. But that's my daily life. I am so fortunate to be able to do this literally for my living. So yeah.
That is so wonderful. Ajanta, thank you so much and more power to you. Please continue doing what you're doing. And we hope to collaborate someday. I don't know when, but if the universe comes together, then we can do that.
Absolutely.
Right?
I would love that.
So thank you so much again. And I will share all your links, your social posts, your books, everything in the description on the channel. So please share that to me. And
Absolutely.
I hope to talk to you soon sometime again. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.